guys, welcome back to another video. So I kind of forgot to make a proper intro for today's video, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into the footage right away. So for April 1st or April Fools, instead of doing kind of like I guess like a prank of some sort, I thought it'd be nice, as you can probably tell by the title of the video, to do kind of a sillier video where I'm going to swap my outfits for my OCs. So we're basically going to do it almost like in a relay fashion. So I had all my OCs names kind of on the wheel and randomly selected kind of like an order for them so that we can kind of like randomly select who's gonna be wearing whose outfit. So instead of working in my sketchbook for today's session, I decided that the bleed through would be a little bit too much for what I wanted to do, and I didn't really feel like I'm going to be wanting to cover up the bleed through later on. So I'm deciding that I'm going to use my Bristol board paper or kind of like a drawing vellum from Strathmore as kind of little strips of paper that we can draw each individual OC on top of, so that way I can place them into my sketchbook a little bit later. So to start off, I am going to be sketching in the color red with the palette color Eno. So let me talk about the order first because it was probably a little bit hard to see, and I did cut out quite a bit of the footage just because that app has a lot of ads. But the order that I ended up with, and I did kind of switch around two characters just because I think it was just a little bit more appropriate in terms of clothing wise. So talking about the order, we are starting off with my OC Akemi, and basically how I decided how the order was going to work with the wheel was that whoever was chosen afterward would be wearing the clothing from the previous OC that was already chosen. So starting with Akemi, I've decided whose outfit he was going to be wearing depending on who was last on the list. So next up we have my OC Moriko. So Moriko has the outfit of Akemi, so basically we're going to be swapping a lot of like aesthetics and their entire wardrobe, but in terms of like how I'm placing them onto the paper in terms of like composition and stuff, I was going to initially do like full body, but because the face was going to end up very tiny and small, I decided to do more of like waist up for all of them, because we'll kind of get the general gist of their outfit for the most part, because I tend to give all of my OCs pretty simple I guess like bottoms and shoes, so it's not too much of a, I guess like a miss if I don't end up drawing them. After Moriko, we have my OC Kaisen. So he's going to be wearing her outfit, which is a little bit different because I don't think I would have imagined drawing Kaisen in something a little bit more like revealing clothing compared to what Moriko would wear. But it was a little bit more easier for me to not be too biased in terms of deciding who was going to wear what outfit. But like I said, later on, you're going to see that I do change the order slightly because I don't really want Koji to be wearing something that was not going to really fit him entirely, if that makes sense. So to make it a little bit more comfortable for his character, I decided to swap him in the last person, which is why Akemi was actually wearing Koji's outfit. So that's kind of how I'm going to be looping them in terms of the sequence of the characters. So just because I don't really want to spoil it until I'm done the sketching portion, I'm going to put all the kind of like name order at the very top of the video once we start doing the line work and the coloring, so that it'll be easier for people to recognize what was the order and who's wearing whose clothing. But next up, we have wearing Kaisen's clothing is my OC Sato. So Sato, she has like a little bit more of a brighter and lighter aesthetic compared to kind of like what Kaisen is wearing, which is a little bit more dark and brooding, and he's like kind of like more covered up, if anything, a lot of baggier clothing. But for Sato, she has a little bit more of a fitted, comfortable aesthetic, I guess I would kind of describe her outfit as. But after that, so after Sato, we actually have Masaki. So because I have chose to swap Koji and Masaki's kind of placement in the line, Masaki is wearing Sato's outfit, and it kind of makes sense a little bit more to kind of make Masaki wear her outfit rather than Koji, just because I feel like the fitting wise, it just makes a little bit more sense in terms of like his age, and I didn't really want to subject him to potentially more revealing clothing, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of the choice of why I kind of switched up the order. And And if I remember correctly, I think I've drawn Masaki in a dress before just because I think Pinterest chose my OC's outfits, and I think his last outfit was the dress, which is kind of like similar color palette to Sato's, so I don't think it's gonna look too off anyways. But last but not least, I think this is a little bit more fitting and it's kind of cute, just because Koji and Masaki kind of have like a almost like mentor or like older brother, younger brother relationship in terms of their characters. So I think it's kind of cute that if he's wearing Masaki's outfit. So yeah, apron, turtleneck, everything like that. And I didn't mention this in the beginning. So even though they're swapping outfits, I am going to be keeping the original color palette of the previous OC. So I'm not going to change, like, let's say the teal and the brown for Koji into like the red and blue that he usually is wearing. So it'll make more sense once we get to the coloring. I just didn't really want to try to fit their aesthetic to the outfit or anything like that. So I just want them to be fully transferred from one outfit to another, from OC to OC. Sorry if this is going to be a little bit confusing. So in terms of the order here, I'm placing them kind of like from right to left at this point. So Akemi to Moriko, Moriko to Kaisen, Kaisen to Sato, Sato is then to Masaki, and then last but not least, we have Koji. So we kind of loop back by having Akemi wearing Koji's outfit, and basically because it kind of loops, I can actually start anywhere and it would still make sense. But let's go ahead and organize all these and move on to the line art portion. So for line art, I decided that I would keep things simple and make all the lines just solid black instead of using the other water-based markers that I have and making them kind of a little bit more softer or tailoring the kind of like line art to the particular area for the character. It's just a little bit faster since I do have to go through 6 different characters for the line work. Also, for the eyes, so I don't know if you can tell, I kind of left them half filled in just because I am leaving the majority of the lines going to be black, but I didn't want to fill their eyes to be completely solid black for all of them because I do think that the eye color kind of contributes to the vibe of the character alongside with the color palette. So I wanted to make sure to include those. So I'm going to leave the bottom half of their eyes colored in with the alcohol markers rather than with these fine liners. I kind of forgot to show the fine liner brand, so it is still the Ohuhu ones, and it's the kind of set of fine liners, so it has like a 0.1, a 0.2, a 3, I think a 5, a 7, I think a 9, and a 1, and a brush tip. So right now I think I'm using the 0.2 or the 0.3, and then later on I'm going to be using the 1.0 to do a thicker outline around all the characters just to make them kind of pop forward from the paper itself. And I'm gonna preface before we get to kind of like the coloring portion or even like the end result that Kaisen's piece, I guess, or like the illustration itself is probably my least favorite just because I kind of botched his pose a little bit and I end up coloring in one portion incorrectly, so it's gonna look a little bit funky if anything, and I feel like he wouldn't react in this way in terms of wearing Moriko's kind of outfit. So if I do this again in the future, maybe digitally, I'll kind of make them a little bit more appropriately how they would react wearing each other's outfits, because I think in the community post where I was asking for like scenarios and like a bunch of questions or anything for my OCs, someone did, at least I believe so, an outfit swap for my OCs. So maybe I'll tackle this again and we'll do another random order for them, and I'll do them digitally this time so we can get a little bit more, I don't know, different poses. I don't have to be too restrained to the constraints of the paper size, if anything. And I don't know, I did have a little bit of a problem with color picking as well in terms of marker selection because I didn't want to go too ham with the kind of like rendering or the shading or blending with the markers. I kind of wanted to leave everything quite flat and a little bit more cel shaded, which we'll get into once we get to the coloring portion. But all the line work that I'm doing for all of my OCs are pretty simple. I'm not really doing a lot of like line weight variation. I'm not going back to thicken lines or anything like that. I'm kind of just making sure that I have something to go off of. Otherwise, I think I might have wanted to kind of like block in the colors and do line work on top afterwards. But there is definitely going to be some parts that I knew I was gonna miss if I didn't do line work kind of like before doing the coloring. Also, I do apologize. I forgot how much my camera shakes with this particular desk, and me zooming in definitely didn't help with the fact that like kind of like the movement and stuff. So it might be a little bit shaky for a little longer, and probably the majority of the line work compared to the coloring portion, hopefully. So like I mentioned earlier, I am going to be using the 1.0 as kind of like a thicker border or outline around the entire character, just to make them stand out a little bit more and kind of give me a little bit more leeway in terms of when I'm doing my fills and flats for the colors, that I don't end up kind of like making it look a little bit too messy by going out of the lines. So it kind of helps buffer that a little bit. So we're kind of finishing up the line work here with Moriko, and in the meantime, I was actually selecting a lot of the other colors per character prior to coloring so that I wouldn't have an entire mess of rainbow colors on my desk. So I am using the Ohuhu markers to kind of match the Ohuhu Fineliners that we were using earlier. I did have a slight kind of regret not using the water-based markers for the line work, because as I was coloring in the skin tone for Akemi, I did notice that there was a tiny bit of smudging here and there, and I don't know if it's because the ink is black so it's a little bit more noticeable, or if it's just because the ink on this particular paper that I get a little bit more smudging compared to when I use the water-based markers. But it's just something I should keep in mind later if I want to do a little bit of testing before committing to using the colors. But as long as I'm using not too light of colors and I'm not kind of, I guess, like spreading the colors all over the lines and smudging over them, then usually I don't really see too much of the ink being kind of bled and spread through the colors. So I'm kind of able to make the colors still seem a little bit more clean, if anything. And I mentioned earlier that I didn't want to do too much like blending or shading, so kind of keeping it a little bit more clean by making it kind of like a cell shaded look. So I'm leaving certain parts with white edges on the very side, and I'm kind of making sure to line these up in terms of making them look like there's some sort of light source that's consistent, and kind of makes it look a little bit more, at least like a little less flat in a sense, because there is a little bit of lighting here and there and it gives it a little bit of dimension, or at least I think it does. So I'm trying my best to leave a little bit of the white of the page so that things just don't read completely flat. But in the end, I do add a little bit of cell shading here and there with a darker color for each of the areas, just because I do want to give it a little bit more dimension than just the flat colors. Otherwise, I probably would have just left it as like complete flats without the edges being white. So I didn't really think that particularly drawing the 6 OCs with their swapped outfits were going to take me as long as it did. So I do apologize that throughout the video, most likely there is going to be a lot of lighting changes, because I kind of switched from natural light to a little bit more cloudier light from the outside, which is still the natural light, and then I'll be switching to artificial light, and it just doesn't really look right, and I feel like it kind of washed out some of the colors for some of my OC's color palettes, especially if they have like a darker tone, or just like any of the black. It just doesn't really read too well because of the exposure, and the artificial light was just not really meshing together. So I do apologize that later on it might not look too accurate to some of the color palettes of my OCs in their original outfits, but I tried my best to do color matching. I think Sato's, or I guess like Kaisen's outfit on Sato is probably going to take the hit the most because it's so dark, but also I had a harder time trying to color match and pick colors that didn't require me to kind of like layer and blend a lot of colors together to achieve the color that I wanted for his outfit on Sato. But as we are coloring in our little awkward Kaisen here with Moriko's outfit, which is a lot of, I guess, like black and kind of like an earthier dark green and kind of like a pastel green top to kind of match her eyes, I would like to know, who do you think kind of worked with certain outfits of my OCs, or who do you want to see in a different outfit of one of my OCs? Because I think it was just kind of like a fun thing to do where you kind of let your OCs wear the other person's clothing, just because it does really change their aesthetic. Oh, I forgot to mention this actually. So for the most part, if the character had accessories that I think kind of makes them to a certain degree, let's say like piercings, or in this case Sato's hair tie, I did change her hair tie to be the same color as Kaisen's color palette, just because it kind of makes a little bit more sense that way. But something like, I think Masaki's bracelet, it kind of made more sense for me to transfer that bracelet to Koji rather than keeping it on Masaki, just because I don't think his is like a necessity at that point. It is kind of part of his outfit a little bit more so than Sato needing to tie her up her hair, and I feel like she would just wear a color that matches probably the part of the outfit anyways. So that's kind of the decision that I decided to make for who's wearing like what accessory, or did I transfer the accessory to another OC. So yeah. There also might be slight inconsistencies with the skin tone. So I believe how I have it set out is that Masaki, Sato, and Akemi actually share the same skin tone for the most part when I color them. But when I was coloring in Akemi's skin tone for the base, it ended up being very dry because I've used that marker quite a bit in terms of like highlight colors or the base of a lot of skin tones that I do, because it's such a light color and it's easy for me to either build on top or to blend. I often use it for also like white clothing if I want to give it a little bit more of that warmer touch. So I definitely need to see if I can find some kind of replacement for that marker, because I do enjoy using it quite a bit. But this time Sato and Masaki look a little bit more yellowy, but hopefully the kind of peachier tone that I use for the shadows kind of bring a little bit more warmth to their face. I think Kaisen is just slightly more kind of like pinker than the rest of them. Koji is slightly tan. I don't think it comes up on the camera properly, and then Moriko has a different skin tone altogether. So hopefully in the future I'll probably find the markers that I want to use for them if I want to do these flats again, just because it kind of does look kind of cute if I kind of do the flats with the cell shading, or at least to me it does, because I tend to go overboard with shading sometimes, especially with like markers, or I want to make things look similar to how I do things digitally. But I do like the flats like this, and it's kind of more on the simple side. So maybe I'll do more of these kinds of illustrations or sketches or whatever you want to call them in my sketchbook as well, so that they're a little bit less pressure. I feel like the colors just come out really clean and nice this way as well. So I kind of breezed through Masaki's portion. So for Masaki, I accidentally colored the collar of her, I guess like Sato's outfit, the wrong color. It's supposed to match the skirt portion as well, but I ended up making it a lot darker just because I kind of forgot Sato's color palette at the time, and I forgot that I made her kind of like top and her skirt kind of match a little bit more closely. But now we are working on Koji, who is wearing Masaki's outfit, which I think just looks super cute. I just feel like I want to draw Koji and Masaki a lot more, just because I kind of miss their dynamic, and I used to doodle them a little bit more when I first made them. So I'll definitely try to draw them a lot more in the future. But here's kind of our lineup for today. So we have all these little guys. So I'll zoom out so that you can see all of them in kind of the full order. So Akemi to Moriko, Moriko to Kaisen, Kaisen to Sato, Sato to Masaki, Masaki to Koji, and then Koji can be placed back to the front if we want to go back to Koji to Akemi. So yeah, this is kind of the outfit swap with their aesthetics. Like I said, a lot of these markers are getting washed out due to my artificial light, so I do apologize about that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video, and let me know who you think worked with whatever outfit. And I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. I'm probably going to spend some time finding places to place this into my sketchbook. But yeah, I think that's it for today. So bye!